Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been with us for several years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thanks to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind our logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also does phenomenal commission pieces of any sort. So tonight we welcome back Morgan Daimler. Don't we always have so much fun when Morgan comes on? It's always so informative and so lighthearted. And tonight will be no different. Tonight we're going to be discussing dreams, essentially dream reality, encounters, lucid dreaming, visitations, premonitions, whatever it involves. I know she's got a lot of information to share, and let's not wait. Let's get the show on the road. Morgan Daimler, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. How are you? Exciting to be back again.
I know. I'm thrilled that you're back. Thank you. We always, like I would say, we always have so much fun. It's so informative. You always have something good cooked up for us, and you're versed in a lot of this stuff, which I love. So there's a big demand for it. I've had so many people. We did an open mic on this weeks ago, and we only touch on some stuff, and people were just like, we really enjoyed that, and people really got into it. So I have absolutely no doubt that this is going to be no different.
Very cool. Yeah, I love this show because there's always such great questions and comments.
Thank you. Well, we have a really awesome chat room, and we're very, very fortunate. We're blessed to have them, and they seem to be very interactive, to which we're grateful. And everyone is there. And there's Amelia under the weather and watching from the sidelines, sends her love. So thanks, Bubbly. And we've got Wayne, we've got Sparkies, we've got Patsy, we've got Heidi. Making the way down the list. So it's going to be a great show. So the world of dreams. Where do we start with the world of dreams?
It's a lot.
Yay!
There's a lot going on there.
All right.
So I think the main place that I'll normally start with this topic is to say that, so there's two types of dreams that people will tend to have.
Okay.
There's the sort of dreams that people are most familiar of when you think of dreams. It's your mind talking to itself. It's your subconscious working out problems. It's all that Freudian stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole other type of dream. And I think this kind, particularly today, we tend to not be aware of or not acknowledge. And it's how dreams were understood before the psychology kind of came into it.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1890s. And it used to be that people took dreams to be real. Like when you dream something, and it's not obviously your mind just talking to itself, but when you dream something and you have experiences, or you wake up in the morning and you feel like, wow, that seemed real.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember it like it actually happened.
Yeah.
People used to believe that was true, that when you were asleep and dreaming, your soul or your spirit, whatever you want to call it, would go out and get into trouble.
So we travel and get into some shenanigans, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, for my own, because I do a lot, of course, with the fairy folklore and the fairy related stuff. That was how I first found out about this, was people talking about having experiences with fairies in their dreams, but it was taken as real. It was never like, oh, this is just you're imagining it.
Right.
It was like, no, your spirit can get into all sorts of stuff when you're sleeping, including the other world, out of this reality.
Wow, that's exciting. I just had somebody message. Yeah, Facebook for some reason is not grabbing, guys. I apologize. Please make your way to YouTube. Sorry. Or X or Rumble or Roku, but just not Facebook. So
Mercury in retrograde strikes.
I know. I know. Days I'm just like, can we just get something work? But apparently there's a big CME happening, and you know, so I you know, technology is fickle to start with, but that doesn't help, I'm sure. So we do travel when we sleep. I mean, they're absolutely. I swear, you could have a good night's sleep, and you got all this stuff going on. You come back, you feel exhausted, trying to think. Like I felt like I haven't slept at all, and you know, and meanwhile, what are we doing? I mean, getting into some trouble, maybe. I feel like I work. I have this sense that I'm working, I'm doing something else. So are we just in our own, you know, our own dimension, or do we travel to other dimensions? Like what happens exactly?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities. So when we look at sort of like the older stories about stuff like this, it was believed that you could go and you could visit people. I've had this experience, and I've had other people contact me and say like, oh, you were in my dream last night. Or, you know, I dreamt that we were you know, off doing whatever. So you can certainly go out and interact with people. You can have experiences sort of within this human world, but you can also have experiences in the world of fairy. You can kind of go anywhere in spirit, because you don't have your physical body sort of anchoring you or holding you down. Your soul just kind of goes where it wants to go.
Yeah.
So
right. So my mind obviously wants to keep working. So Wayne says the same thing. I think I'm off helping people. So you know, so how does that fit in? Would this, I mean, deja vu fit into this? Meanwhile, it's not like it's deja vu because we're traveling and we've really been there just, you know, after the fact. I mean, are we dreaming anything imaginary, or is it always doing something?
Well, that does make it a little complicated, because certainly we do have some dreams that are pretty clearly just our mind is talking to itself.
Yeah.
You know, like if you've been super stressed about something and then you find yourself dreaming about that thing, that's probably more just, you know, your brain working stuff out.
Right.
And then we might also have dreams that are very internal, where it's still our soul. It's not us coming from our heads, so to speak.
Right.
But it happens kind of within ourselves in some sense. And then you definitely have the ones where you're wandering off. And I see someone in the comments mentioning it actually being astral. And that certainly comes into play too. You know, there's the astral realm, there's our ability, our soul's ability to connect with or travel in that place. And I personally, not everyone agrees with this, so just, you know, to be fair about that, but I personally see the astral realm and the world of like fairy to be different places. I think they have slightly different roles.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's a lot of options for where you can go and why. And to add to that fun, you can encounter other beings. You know, it's not like you just, again, like if you were in your mind, anything that's happening, it's you with you yourself. When your spirit is kind of out wandering around, whether that's the astral plane or the world of fairy or wherever, you can encounter both other humans and other like human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
lots of interesting things.
So is that similar to like dream weaving, where you can meet up with somebody in your dreams, like your significant other or, a friend, and you sort of connect up and get into shenanigans together?
Yeah, I would say they're very similar. And I've known people who both had the ability to like interact with other people's dreams
Mm-hmm.
in ways that could sort of be objectively verified. And also people who had an ability to sort of call someone else to their dream. I had a really good friend who dealt with that for a while with someone who she had a loose connection to,
Mm-hmm.
but not like a super tight sort of friendship connection.
Right.
But she would find herself dreaming about this person and then would usually run into him at some point after that. And he would say, oh, did you dream about me on such and such a day? And then he'd say, yeah, I wanted to talk to you. So I kind of called you to me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Facebook is up.
Interesting things.
So does everybody dream, or do you like, because often you'll wake up and you'll say, did you dream? No, I never dream.
Yep.
Because you can't ever remember it. Like, why can't we remember it?
Yes. Everybody dreams. Or I should say, obviously there's exceptions to every rule. As soon as I say that, I'm thinking of, there are some medical conditions where you won't dream, but the majority of people, everybody dreams.
Right.
We often don't remember them. And what I'll usually tell people is, this is not 100% solid rule, but generally speaking, the dreams that are just our mind kind of talking to itself, we won't remember. Or those are the ones you wake up, and when you wake up, you remember, like, I did whatever, and then it really fades quickly, and then you can't remember it. But I find when you wake up and you're like, did that really happen? Like, was that a dream, or am I remembering something? Or it just, everything seems very real.
How do you know the difference?
Well, like I said, I find that if you wake up and you remember it to a degree where you actually feel like that did happen.
Right.
And you have to sort of sit for a minute and think, like, wait, did it though?
Yeah. You start second guessing yourself and you ruin it for yourself.
Right.
Right.
But when it feels like a memory, and I've had this happen over the years. It's not like an every night thing, but there are situations where that's happened, 10, 15 years ago, and I still remember it very clearly, as if it was a memory of an actual, waking world event. I've also had cases, and I'm not the only one, I know other people who have as well, where something happens in the dream and then you wake up and there's a physical component in this world to it. I had a friend, for example, who in a dream had been scratched in a particular pattern and woke up and found that exact same thing in that same place, as if it had really happened. I've had dreams where, I take off all my jewelry in the dream and then I wake up and my jewelry's gone, and not like I actually took it off in my sleep and it's just there. Like it's somewhere super weird. When it eventually turns up.
See, that's very different.
Yeah.
Because that's a physical thing that's actually going on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And when you have particularly the physical things that can't really easily be explained, like obviously my friend who had the dream about being scratched, it was on her arm. Theoretically, she could have done that to herself and just not been aware of it. I always like to make room for the so-called rational explanations with everything. But there's been points where I've had dreams where it was stuff that, there's no way I could have done that to myself, or there's no way I could have done that without someone else being aware, things like that. So, I think there's definitely times, and I suspect actually this happens to more people. But like you said, we rationalize it. We wake up and we immediately start to be like, well, there has to be some explanation for this.
Yeah. Well, one would think. I mean, when you say memories, you dreaming about past life memories? Are you dreaming about maybe some of the excursions you've been on? Like, I know with lucid dreaming you can do that because I used to be able to pause, fast forward, back up, do all kinds of things with my dreams. If I really liked a certain thing I was doing, I could keep going back or
Replay.
continue on night after night after night. Obviously, doesn't happen anymore. I'm lucky if I can remember my dreams, unless it's substantial, right? So what is it? Past life memories?
I think it's kind
Or
of all of the above.
okay.
I think we really underestimate, first of all, just like the power of the mind, like how much is going on.
Yeah. Lots.
Yeah. I had read somewhere, and it's not like literally true, but it's a good sort of analogy that we only use like 10% of our brain. So there's really so much potential there, just in a purely, physiological sense. And you'll hear sometimes about people who have like a weird accident or head trauma, and all of a sudden they can speak like 5 languages.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah. So what are you tapping into there?
Yeah. And then, of course, you add in the layer of the spirituality, depending on what you believe. If you believe in reincarnation, your soul has all those memories. We just normally can't access them. So, when we're sleeping, we're so much more open to possibility, because that rational, conscious mind is mostly turned off.
That's true.
Yeah. And
so things get quiet, again, you fall into sleep. I can sometimes tell when I'm going to have a night of, I call it like where I'm more active, because I know I'm a traveler, because, and I come back. Sometimes you come back with like information.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're speaking. Like I've been known, I'm just saying, because I know someone's going to say something about it, but I've been known to speak, the occasional odd language. One was Aramaic.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And, and I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know. I have to be traveling. I have to be doing something. And again, it's essentially very, very, talking in other languages. Yes. See, there it goes. So it definitely is a thing. It's not the first time either. So am I just at work at that moment, or I'm in another whole plane of existence, or is that past life?
It could be any of the above.
Right.
I personally tend to think with the speaking languages, or I've also heard of people speaking in accents that they don't have in English normally, things like that while they're sleeping. My personal take on that would be that that's like some past life stuff peeking through. Because again, that filter is gone, that conscious filter. So, things can come through, things will come through. We're so much more open to things when we're sleeping for that reason. I know a lot of people who try to work with fairies. I'll try not to make this entire episode about fairies.
Oh, well, if it's it is connected, so I mean, feel free to jump where you have to.
They're bound to come up a little bit at least.
Yeah, that's okay. More than okay.
But I know people who, who work with them or connected to them, who will receive communication in dreams, or they'll be brought places, they'll be taught things. I'll give you a personal example here. I had a dream. Oh Lord, it has to be probably 10 years ago at this point, because it's been a while. I should preface this by saying I am not someone who cooks a lot.
Over here too.
Yeah, I cook enough to survive, and my children are still alive. That's about where we're at with the cooking. But I promise that's important to the story. So I don't know a lot about cooking. I'm not one of those people who lives in the kitchen, whatever. We're just basic. We manage to get by. And I had a dream like 10 years ago, and in the dream, I was with this woman, and she was showing me how to cook these, she called them like honey cakes, but it was literally just flour and like an egg, I think, and honey mixed together. And then she was showing me like in detail in the dream, like this is how much to measure. This is how you mix it. This is how you cook it. And then you put honey on it when you're, finishing it.
Yeah.
And I woke up and I was like, that was, first of all, super intense. Like I remembered it very clearly when I woke up. But then I got kind of curious because I'm like, I don't even know if this would work. I don't know enough about cooking to begin with to know if the thing I was given even makes any kind of sense. But I'm like, well, let's try. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
And it actually is very edible. The way I was shown in the dream, it's almost like these honey pancakes is how they come out.
Yeah.
But I also figured out a way to bake them so they make like actual little cakes. And this was all from a dream.
Wow, very interesting. So somebody maybe over there wants to see you do some baking or some cooking.
Trying to encourage me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really fascinating that it was something that I had no knowledge base for it. There was no way my own subconscious came up with this, basically. Yeah. But when I actually tried to do it, it worked,
Yeah. So that's very cool. You're getting something out of it. It's almost like getting like a download, because
Yes.
I mean, I have actually, woken up with like hands on my head, and I end up like just drifting off. And next thing you know, you've got all this knowledge, or you're able to see things, like I can lay down and say, I want to tap into the dragon realm, for example, I want to see it, and there it is. Yeah. Right. Does it happen all the time? No, I wish it did. I'd be playing the lottery if I could do that, all the time. But if I'm just in the right headspace, I can if I can will myself to go in and check out, these different places. But when you get these downloads, could that even be considered, since it's a lot of times it happens in the dream state? So where is that coming from?
I think it happens in the dream state because we're more open to it.
Right.
I think if we could find a way when we're awake to have that same sort of unfiltered connection, we could get more of things like those downloads. I think the downloads, again, some of it can be past life stuff. If you knew things in a past life, I do believe that can come through in current life. But I think a lot of times it's different sorts of spirits or beings or whatever we want to call them, trying to communicate with us. And sometimes that means just directly giving this information. Could also be your soul wandering off and, connecting to something and getting that kind of information. And I know you'd kind of mentioned this before, and then we moved on to something else, but I have had friends who've had experiences with like deja vu, but in ways that sort of act as warnings. Like I had a friend who had a very vivid dream of her mother in her mother's house, and there was an issue with the furnace.
Like a premonition.
I think it ended up exploding in the dream. It was very dramatic. And so then like a few days go by and her mother calls her and she's talking, and her mother starts describing a bunch of the things that had happened in the dream. And so she immediately got really freaked out and was like, you need to get out of your house. There's an issue with the furnace. And her mother, for whatever reason, was trusting enough to be like, okay, you're clearly concerned about this and upset, so I'm going to listen. And there was some sort of leak that was happening that she hadn't been aware of. So it was a little mix of like deja vu and like forewarning.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like you get premonitions like that, and these like dark foreboding things.
Well, I just thought it was so fascinating that what reminded her was that feeling of deja vu as her mother's describing this stuff, and she's realizing this is literally everything that I saw in that dream, and at the starting part of the dream. And she said that the feeling of it was just so strange. It's like, listening to her mother talking as if she had already like heard all of this before. If it was a conversation they had in the dream. And I mean, it worked out obviously because it saved her, but yeah, very unnerving though.
It would be unnerving. It's just, it's funny because I know people who will tell you they don't have a gifted bone in their body, but yet they'll have premonitions.
Yeah.
And they happen. And I'm just like, like I've met people, throughout my life, like people I've worked with and, clients and such. And they're like, oh no, like this happens to me all the time. I'm like, I think you're gifted. No. Well, there's something.
It. Yeah. Well, that's part of the problem we have today is because, and I say this as someone with a psych degree, so I'm not trying to criticize of field of psychology, but
no, of course,
because psychology has become such a big thing, and psychology is very quick to be like, dreams are just your mind talking to itself. It's you working stuff out and all this other stuff. We've, over the last 140 years, we've developed this attitude of like, well, dreams aren't real. Dreams are just your imagination, your mind. And I think it's a shame because if you look before that, people did take dreams very seriously. And if you had a premonition dream, if you had a dream that was concerning or, whatever, they would take it seriously. And now it's like, if you go and try to tell someone, well, I had a dream that I think is a premonition, some people will listen, particularly I'm sure the audience here tonight would be more open-minded, but if I went and said that to most of my family, my extended family, they'd be like,
like what?
Maybe you should take another nap.
Well, there's a lot to it because I truly believe that most people have had all these incredible experiences, like, traveling dreams and downloads, messages, and, we can get into visitations for a while and, or in a bit. And then we've got like certain type of dreams and the beliefs with all of that. I'll just get to a couple of comments and questions. One, do pets dream?
I mean,
I like to say yes because I've seen them on their sides snoring and their little legs are
immediately thinking of my cats.
Yeah.
They definitely do dream. Whether they travel around in spirit when they're dreaming, I mean, I'm sure to be, just this is my perspective, so people feel free to agree with me, it's perfectly fine, but I think that they do. I do think animals have spirits, and
yes,
I'm sure that their dreaming works the same way ours does, where sometimes it is just our imagination, but other times there's more going on. Cats are probably a bad example because cats are interesting animals
at any given time. They
have their own set of rules.
No, they think they're royalty. There's a reason the Egyptians worship them, and they know it. So
I was actually talking with my kids earlier because we have 3 cats, and one of them, my son was asking him, my youngest son was asking him, like, who's his favorite, and we all kind of agreed that he would be his own favorite because that's just how cats are.
Right.
Like, who's your favorite person? Myself. That is what the cats would say.
That's what the cats would say. It's all me. Yeah.
They have very good self-esteem.
Why not? Heidi says, I've always been so intrigued with dream symbolisms.
Yeah, I love talking about dream symbolism, but I also think it's very frustrating. Despite all the books that are out there that are like the, encyclopedia of dream symbols and all this other stuff, I do believe that dream symbolism is very personal. Like if I dream about a cardinal, the little red bird, and you dream about a cardinal, the little red bird, we could have very different meanings for that, like what that symbolizes. And that you really have to kind of interpret dreams. I think you have to become fluent in like your own language of symbols,
Yes. Well, I think with, even like pertaining to pets, a couple of examples about how they can have bad dreams, or Wayne was saying, his dog was asleep and like she was running, legs are moving, but her breathing was matching, seemed to be matching what she was doing.
Hmm.
It gets, it's crazy. So yeah, she goes, a lot of books. I agree, it's more individualized. Another or comment from Kevin. He goes, anytime I go into or as far into other realms, I tend to use my animal totems. I transform into an eagle or mountain lion, and if I'm going into space, it seems I will call on my sun dragon.
Yep, I think that's pretty common for,
Mhm.
especially for people who intentionally do spirit traveling and have learned how to like intentionally send that out or control it. There's this sort of fluidity with spirit where, we can appear in a human form if that's what we're choosing to do, but we can also kind of reshape and influence things in ways that we can't do, in our waking life. I assume most people probably can't anyway. Some
Yeah.
people might be able to.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. And when you get into symbolism, again, I really like using birds.
Mhm.
When you see them in dreams, because in waking life, for example, a lot of loved ones, like my mother, for example, loved doves and cardinals, and we would see cardinals all the time. My sister would see doves. That would be just like, oh, for Pete's sakes! But in weird situations, not just randomly seeing them.
Yeah.
Like you'd have one sitting there. Like I had a dove when a friend of mine passed forever over top of my door sill, and it was a white dove that somebody like let off at a wedding. And I'm like, God sakes, this bird's been here for a week. It's ridiculous. I put food out and I don't know if it would eat or not. So I called a friend of mine who dealt with birds, and he was on his way to pick this poor little dove up, and she left.
Yeah. Just
So,
left.
I mean, and then when you're dreaming about, let's say, crows or ravens, people panic because there are a lot of cultures out there, or misleading information about, the just bad omens and, messengers of doom, but they are messengers
Yeah.
for sure. So what happens if you see one? You wake up and you're ready to have a stroke because you think something terrible is about ready to happen to you.
Yeah. It's
And
it's it's funny actually, because I had someone fairly recently, he was asking about owls. What do owls symbolize?
mhm,
And I was like, that is such an impossible question to answer, because if you look at this culture here,
yeah,
owls are symbols of wisdom. If you
yes,
look at this culture over here, they're horrible bad omens.
yeah,
If you look at this other culture, like it
yeah.
just the possibilities are so all over the place.
So
You
is
know?
this where you have to maybe get into dream interpretation?
Yeah.
Because not everything is what it seems. Like if you dream of death, it doesn't necessarily mean death. It's like rebirth, right?
Yes. Yeah, things are rarely straightforward in dreams, even the
Yeah.
more um real, I guess we'll say, dreams.
Yeah.
It's usually not like, if you're afraid of something happening, you're usually not going to dream about that specific thing,
Mhm.
but you'll dream about something that your mind subconsciously associates with it.
Mhm.
Everyone will get a laugh out of this, I'm sure. When I get really stressed out, like if I have to do a big presentation for something, or I'm just feeling very like imposter syndrome-y, I will always end up dreaming about being back in high school.
Oh, really? Why
But
would you
not
do
like
that to yourself?
not like I'm a teenager in high school, but like I'm an adult, but I'm going
Right.
to high school, and somehow
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
thinks I'm supposed to be there,
Mhm.
and it's very stressful.
Right. Have you ever tried to interpret it to see what's up with high schools and just what it represents? Because you really have to dissect a dream, don't
Yeah.
you? I mean, literally, it's like I dreamt of a snake, but I was in the hollow, and I had, and then there was this person, or there was this apple tree specifically, or in the color, or
Yeah. I was just gonna say colors.
yeah,
Colors can be really important too, where I should say, apparently not everyone dreams in color, but if you are the sort of person who dreams in color, if you're dreaming and everything is, say, green, but for you, green's a good color. That's like a good luck color. That would be a good thing, good energy. Whereas like if you're someone who associates green with like jealousy, totally different meaning. So yeah, I always encourage people, like, try to start building your own sort of catalog of symbols and figure out what you think of with certain colors. I'm a huge believer in writing down your dreams, like as soon as you wake up, keep a little thing journal.
Because if you don't, it'll be gone, won't it? Like, it's hard. But I mean, I just talk to my phone because I know I can't write when I'm kind of like, oh my God, I got to remember this. But it's weird because in my dream, I'll say, I need to write this down. I need to remember this. I'm aware that in my dream that I'm not going to remember it when I wake up. It's ridiculous.
That's funny. Well, and I think
sure, we can go with that.
Well, it's funny that like you have the self-awareness in the moment of like,
I know. It's so disappointing. You wake up, you're like, damn, all I remember was a part where I said I had to remind myself.
All I remember is that I need to remember this. That's funny. And I do want to also say, like, because when you get into studying like dream stuff and becoming more aware of the importance of your dreams, I think a lot of people will immediately look for books and start trying to like learn the structures. And there's so many things in books that I personally have found are not true. Like, you'll read people talking about how like you can't read in dreams. That you for whatever the logic will be, like the part of your brain that handles literacy shuts down when you're sleeping. I've had many dreams where I read messages, or I woke up and I could copy things that I had seen with alphabets. I've heard people say you don't dream in color. I know I've had dreams in color.
I dream in color.
Yeah. So I always tell people, like, if you're starting to be interested in the subject, definitely do research. That's always fun, but always take everything as a suggestion, not a rule.
That's a tough one. It's like going to a medium and realizing like that word is law, that when you make a decision and your destiny changes. It's the same thing in dreams, I think, because I've had dreams where I'm at a crossroad and I have to decide which way I want to go. Then, and I've often wondered, like, if I would have went the other way, what would have happened?
Yeah. Well, and I do think this loops back around to this idea of dreams being more real, that we should treat dreams like these are things that are actually happening in some way. However you want to believe that, whether you think it's literally happening in a spirit world, or whether you think it's happening internally or what, but just acknowledge that there's some sort of reality that is intersecting here. Dreams have a lot more value, I think, than a lot of people tend to give them.
I would agree with you on that. I think it's just a matter of trusting or knowing the difference. Are you just harboring, like having thoughts? Because I think if you're incorporating things from your day or from a movie you've watched, it's safe to say that it's that junk in your head just playing itself out.
Yeah, I agree. I have definitely had moments where I was like binge watching a show or trying to push through and read a novel in like a day. And your head gets so full of that, and you go to sleep, and then you're dreaming that you're in the TV show, or you're dreaming that you're in the plot of the novel. And it's like, okay, well, that's clearly my brain is,
hanging out with the dude from the movie you watched or something. It's just like running. It gets a bit crazy. Misha, I heard once that you can't see your hands in a dream. I've never actually paid attention to that.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating if you look at all of the different things people will say. And I do think they're probably true for different people.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like that thing that'll go around that's like, you know, some people, when you're reading a book, you're picturing everything as if you're watching a movie, like it's very detailed and happening. And then it goes on a scale of less and less and less until you get to the people who they have no internal image at all. They're just reading the words and then processing the words. And I think dreaming can be like that too. I think some people have more rigid, I guess we'll say,
Yeah.
ways that their mind deals with these things, and other people are at the complete other end of the spectrum. You know, there are no rules.
There are never rules in the dream world. Kevin says, but some will swear that you can't read in dreams.
So the first time I ever realized that maybe the books that are out there on this subject are not 100% accurate for everybody was because of the you can't read in dreams thing. I think I was trying to learn about lucid dreaming, which is still, I can do that, but it's very hit or miss. I am not an expert.
I'm not good at it anymore. No.
But I think I was initially when I was trying to, and I was reading one author who, this is probably back in, you know, like the 2000s, so I don't remember the author's name, but was pretty well known at the time for like writing about dream stuff. And they were very adamant that you absolutely cannot read in a dream, and that that's a good way to tell, to like train your brain to be aware that you're in a dream so that you can lucid dream and take control of it. And I immediately was like, I read in dreams all the time. Like, I don't know what's wrong with my brain, but you know, I've even woken up and been able to like remember symbols that I've seen that aren't, you know, alphabetical letters. So
what kind of symbols? Like, what kind of symbols? Like hieroglyphs or?
I guess pictographs is what we call them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I had a very intense, this is one of those dreams I can still remember, even though it was years and years ago. A very intense dream that I was somewhere where there was like a river and there were a bunch of people swimming and a lot of stones and stuff.
Yeah. And
someone pulled me aside and asked me if I wanted like basically a psychic reading in the dream. Like, do they want me to tell me my future? And I was like, well, sure, you know, why not? And I distinctly remember they got a stick and they were drawing symbols in the sand, like next to the water, and explaining as they were showing. And I was focusing so much on remembering the symbols. When I woke up, I could remember the symbols. I wrote them all down, but I couldn't remember what the person was saying they each meant. So I was focusing on the wrong thing.
See, if you can master lucid dreaming, you could go back and just go through that one moment.
Yeah.
So, it's tough. It's tough. Like coming from someone who used to lucid dream all the time, and I could will it to happen just by thinking about it roughly 15 minutes before I went to bed. I would think of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be, and who I wanted to be with. You know, the with part didn't always work. I mean, sometimes I would just say, oh, you know, I'd like a visitation, like with my grandfather. I used to visit with him a lot, and he had passed at that time, and I could just do it, you know, and if I wanted to just stay there in that time and moment, I could just put myself there. But now it's like you have kids and it just something to your brain cells. You just can't get back there. It just takes them out of your head.
I actually have a bit of a theory since you brought it up.
Yeah.
Because I have noticed, I have 3 children, and I've noticed particularly since my youngest was born, it's much harder for me to have these sorts of like intense connective dreams and lucid dreaming and spirit traveling. And I really truly think part of it is that the more kids you have, the more your brain gets trained. Every little noise wakes you up.
It's true.
Every little thing, like you get very hyper aware.
You can't allow yourself to get deep enough into a dream state, basically.
Yeah. I really do think that it's, you know, whether it's your spirit is staying closer because you might be needed, or it rewires something and it makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
he's
very hard.
12 now. He does not need me to be super hyper aware mom,
But
but
you're conditioned now, you see.
yeah, I've
So
been trained.
it's a lot different.
Yeah.
Um, Phil was saying that his wife has lesions on her brain from MS, and that she lucid dreams all the time. And damage to areas of the brain involved in sleep and cognitive function, which can be seen on an MRI, may cause changes to dreams in people with multiple sclerosis.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that before, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Because like
Yeah.
I am aware of people who've had things like head injuries,
Hmm.
concussions, or small bleeds on the brain that then it opens something up or it rewires something in a way that's different
Hmm.
than people who don't have that same issue. Anytime we think about stuff like that, we always think of it as a negative thing.
Hmm.
Obviously, I mean, MS in general is a negative thing, but
Yeah.
sometimes that can still open things up in a different way that other people can't access.
Yeah. No, I used to actually did aging myself a bit back in the day. I actually did my school co-op for the MS Society, and I learned a lot about things like that. It was, quite fascinating. How everything works up here. Um, he says here, many people with MS report having vivid dreams and nightmares that are often specifically related to their disease. Some dream about being disabled or having their symptoms progress
Yeah.
and so on. Which brings us to nightmares. Where
Excellent.
with that? Yeah. you know, because I mean, if you can control your dreams,
Mhm.
I imagine there are people who lucid dream, for example, who may not end up in that situation. So where do nightmares come from in the dream reality world?
Yeah, so much like with everything else we've been talking about, there's no simple answer, but some of it is definitely your brain talking, stressing itself out, basically.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'll have nightmares about being back in high school, but an adult, but trying to hide that I'm an adult, which is just ridiculous and much more stressful than it sounds when I'm explaining it. But that's obviously just my brain is working some things out. Um, I do think sometimes we have premonitions
Mm-hmm.
that can appear as nightmares if they're more on the negative end of things. My friend with the furnace issue with her mother, she initially thought that was a nightmare. She just thought, I'm so anxious and worried about my mom,
Mm-hmm.
until it was actually happening. And then she was like, oh, this is literally what I dreamed. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe this was not just a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also certain types of spirits that can cause nightmares. The word nightmare in English actually comes from that. Mayor, Marin is another name for them, are a particular type of spirit. And they were called nightmares because they would attack people at night when they were sleeping. There's all sorts of like folk remedies to kind of defend against them, but they would not only cause you to have like horrible dreams, nightmares, but they also would cause sleep paralysis and would sit on a person's chest so that they felt like they couldn't breathe.
Yeah, like the hag syndrome that
Exactly.
happens in the paranormal community.
Exactly, and that's where that comes from. It's all rooted in
Yeah.
this concept of the mayor,
Mm. Yeah.
which I realize in English it gets confusing because nightmare and then mayor is like a female horse, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Different word.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone was ever curious where the word nightmare came from, it came from these night spirits, these hags that would attack people while they were sleeping. And it's really fascinating to look at that sort of component to it.
Mhm.
And then of course you have alien abduction experiences where people are sleeping.
That happens. That happens. Sleep
Right.
paralysis,
Yep.
which will wake you up. I mean, there's the sleep paralysis thing, aside from the scientific side of things, has often been expressed, by experiencers in alien abduction or contact, as well as Again, the hag syndrome and the paranormal, you
Yep.
know.
I was gonna say we see it with fairy folklore sometimes too. There's a huge amount of crossover between aliens and abduction stories and fairy folklore and belief. But that's one thing that you'll see, this sleep paralysis being talked about by people who have certain types of paranormal experiences, but also people who have certain alien or alien abduction experiences. So it's fascinating stuff to me.
Fascinating yet terrifying. I remember reading about a scientist who was out of Canada who was researching sleep paralysis, and he ended up having his own experience. And he said it terrified him. It terrified him. He swore with everything. And this is a scientist who had been researching this for years, and this was his thing. And he goes, it terrified him. He goes, I felt with everything in me that I was not alone.
Yeah.
So what opens that door?
No, I believe it. I only once in my entire life have I had an experience with a nightmare, not the bad dream kind, the spirit kind, to be clear. And it is really deeply disturbing. I'm perfectly fine with only having had this happen once. It can never happen again and be fine.
Oh God.
But I was asleep and I woke up, but I realized I couldn't move. Like it was that sleep paralysis. I was aware, but I could not move at all. And there was just this horrific feeling of like impending doom. You know, like you're laying in bed, you're frozen, you can't move, but you feel like something terrible is about to happen like any second. And then you start to have trouble breathing because you're getting upset. And I think that's where the pressure in the chest idea comes from. In my case, at the time, my youngest was still pretty little. And I was not getting good sleep in general. So I remember being completely terrified and then having this moment where I was just like, I do not need this. Like, I have enough going on in my life.
Yeah. Can we just not?
Right. Whatever this is, I do not need this right now. And I remember very clearly thinking, like, I am too tired to deal with whatever this is. And like as soon as I started to feel more angry than anything else, it immediately stopped.
That's so funny. They say if you can move even so much, just one, like even your little finger, it breaks it. And I've done that because it's happened to me twice. But I'll tell you, one of the times it happened, I mean, they happen within about a month apart. So I tend to wonder if it's the location I was working at with a family who had a very malevolent energy there. And because it felt like that. But then that's what sleep paralysis does.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't feel the pressure on my chest. I just felt that I wasn't alone. And I just remember saying, there's not enough room here for the two of us. And I'm telling you, I'm not going. In my head, that's all I'm saying. So, you know, but I mean, when I stopped, when that was dealt with, you know, my work with this family, it never happened to me again. Never happened to me before.
Yep.
So
yeah, I definitely think certain locations, certain activities, I think can also open us up a little more to certain things.
Yeah.
It's
I think when you sleep, you know, you just open up completely, you know, and I think sometimes that's a time where you feel the most vulnerable. Maybe you are the most vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree.
And
It's such a catch-22 because on the one hand, you are literally helpless. You are asleep. Your physical body is turned off. You just have your spirit. But on the other hand, it's also a time when we can be so much more open to things that otherwise, when we're awake, we might rationally not be willing to see or acknowledge or accept in a positive way. So yeah, it is such a catch-22. You can definitely have horrible experiences. But I think a lot of people who are very resistant to the idea of like psychic phenomena or spirits are, you know, can have those experiences, encounters when they're sleeping, even if consciously they would never be open to that.
I would agree with you. Mish says, I have, like old hags, sometimes only I can't open my eyes or move, but I can hear someone rustling through my stuff in my room. It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry that that person deals with this repeatedly because, like I said, I dealt with it once and that was horrible. So I can't imagine. I know there's people who have it like on a regular basis.
Oh, I can't imagine it. So do we become, I mean, there is that belief that we ourselves are portals, right? And do you think it's just that door just goes wide open when we are in a deep state of sleep?
I think often it does. And I think that is probably the reason. I think the humans are just wired this way. And I think that's probably the reason if you look back, like across cultures, across time, as far back as we can go, everyone always has sleep charms. Everyone always has like protective things that they're supposed to do. Christians pray. There's all sorts of like before sleep prayers. There's cultures, like I think it's the Ojibwe who have the dream catchers.
Yes.
Which, you hang it up in order to protect you from these bad dreams, bad spirits. Every culture seems to have like certain things that you're supposed to do to protect yourself while you're sleeping, because we just seem to be kind of wired for these interactions, have these connections when we're sleeping in particular.
Yeah, it's scary. It really is.
It can be. Yeah.
It can be. I just think if you're not prepared or you're not aware, I mean, probably have half the world at least that just goes to bed every night thinking you're just going to bed every night, and you might have a dream. I don't know how many people put that much thought into the whole process of it.
Yeah.
Like
I said, I think for us at least, where we are in our culture, we just have such a dismissal of dreams. There's always this idea of like, well, dreams don't really matter. Don't worry about remembering them. Don't stress about them. They're whatever. And in other cultures and then in our culture in the past, it would have been taken very seriously. Like if you woke up and said, I had a horrible night because I kept feeling like, this spirit was attacking me. People wouldn't respond to like, well, maybe you shouldn't eat cheese before you go to bed or whatever people would say.
Right.
Always blame the cheese.
Yeah.
They would be like, well, let's put a protective charm on your bed. Let's, see what we can do to protect you. They would take it seriously as if it was a real thing that had happened. Instead of being like, well, it's whatever, it was just a dream.
Well, see, I'll ask you this because you work with so much in folklore. It seems that the ancients really had an understanding of things like this. I mean, it was different times. People say, oh, it was primitive. No, I think that they really had an understanding of everything within even the ethereal world that took to the stars, and they worked with, I mean, they encompassed everything. Here we are with all of this technology, and which I think, may, with frequencies and things like that, may affect some of what people experience when they lay their head down at night as well, because we're made up of energy. We're going to be affected by other energy. It's that simple. But we don't have, a lot of people don't seem to have an understanding of that compared to the ancient world, because they would use, they put, like iron over the doors and things like that to keep away this negative thought. So, I mean.
Yeah, I think that I love science. I love things like air conditioning and antibiotics, indoor plumbing. Like I have a whole list of modern stuff I love.
Yes.
But I do think that because we have such like a rational, science-focused sort of culture, there is a tendency to act like if you cannot measure it, if you cannot objectively prove that it exists, then we don't need to take it seriously, and it's not like a real thing, which is kind of silly because science is constantly discovering stuff, new stuff, or supporting ideas, that we've had that got dismissed as being paranormal and irrational and whatever, until they found a way to prove there's actually something going on with it.
It's very much so. But I still lean back to, again, just ancient times, because you can look, at all of the indigenous people around the world who have their oral history, and they talk about, about different things like that, or different stories, or whatever that has been on from their tribes or communities going back centuries. But you still read about things like that now. I have iron, really old iron, over my doors and windows. Like, I'm aware of it, and I think it works wonders. Or working with certain stones.
Oh yeah, certain stones, iron is always a good bet. Some different types of plants. Some more universal symbols. People will talk about, like in folklore, you'll hear stories about like hanging crosses over particularly babies, but a lot of times they're not talking about like the Christian cross. They're talking about like an equal armed cross, a solar cross.
Yes.
Which is also the shape of a crossroads. Like, there's a ton of symbolism happening with that, but it's a protective symbol across a huge range of cultures. Disconnected. It's not like it started somewhere and got shared around. Like, just different cultures in different places, on their own came to believe that this is protective. So yeah, it's really interesting to look at that. And I think dreaming is one of those universal human things. Like, part of what makes us human, or makes humans human, is this ability to dream, and this ability to have these encounters and experiences and whatever moments, while we're dreaming. And hence why every culture has protections for sleep.
Yeah, true enough. You're
opening yourself up.
Yes. I always lean to the ancient ways as much as I can. I will always start there.
I think there's a lot of wisdom back there that we should pay more attention to.
I think so too. I love technology, and I'm a very logical thinker, and but I still know that there are things that they're not the norm anymore, but that they really are things that work. Wayne says, my dreams are always three-dimensional in a color. I feel the rain, I hear the sounds. I can smell things. Too. In my dreams, so I can absolutely relate. Heidi says, I heard a few years ago, and I've tried it. I found it helpful. Is that envisioning the color brown or having brown tones is unappealing to spirits? I did not know that, Heidi.
Interesting. I'll have to try that. One thing that I actually got this from a movie, but it works really well. If you're having trouble with like repetitive bad dreams of a particular thing, our subconscious doesn't hear the word no. So you can't tell yourself like, I'm not going to dream about whatever. I don't want to dream about whatever, because you're just programming it that's what you're going to dream about. So instead you want to say things like, I'm not going to dream about puppies or whatever. Pick something you like. And it has the same effect. Your brain then, because you put so much energy into, I'm not going to do this, that is what you're going to have happen.
Yes.
So that's another fun little dream trick you can use. If you want to dream about a specific thing before you go to bed, focus on not dreaming about that.
No, don't focus about it and you'll get it.
It works though. If you try it, it really does work.
Worth a try. I'm down for trying. Phil says crystal skulls. Yeah, I do have a crystal skull. But a lot of people find, again, depending, I think, on the stone, or like quartz tends to be one of those double-edged swords that you talk about, can amplify energy as much as it can be a protective source as well. So I guess it reacts to our energy, right?
Yeah. Well, and like the color thing that just got mentioned, I think that also, because in my understanding anyway, and again, I always want to clarify, different people have different opinions, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But my understanding, colors are frequency. So when you focus on a particular color, you're focusing on the frequency that color vibrates at, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that you pick a color like brown that probably has like a lower vibrational level.
Yeah.
That would be a color that maybe would not appeal to a lot of spirits. It would act like in a protective way. Whereas if you're focusing on a different color that might be more inviting or opening, you're going to get different results.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. I could see that. I mean, spirits are people once too. Nobody likes brown. Just,
Well,
but it's an earth color as well.
Yes.
Right. And it's a grounding color.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And I think that, we really underestimate in general how a lot of the things around us affect us. Colors are a good example. You mentioned crystals. I hear a lot of people will get very, poo-poo about crystals, like it's just new age nonsense. But there's been so many studies that show that no, actually crystals do have connections to certain things. They do influence.
Tesla believed it. He worked with them, and he said it was one of the most incredible things that he had worked with.
Yeah, I think that if we were less skeptical, and we, like, in a general sense, not anyone here specifically, if we were less skeptical and more open to experimenting and trying things, I think there's a lot of stuff that we would figure out, kind of like that color brown protecting your dreams thing. There's a lot of things we would figure out if we just were willing to try.
Yeah. Have you heard of, we'll go on now to the next thing. Have you heard of apocalyptic dreams?
Like end of the world dreams?
Yeah. There's a theory that people who have them, because a lot of times apocalyptic dreams are centered, like people that contactees have spoken about, like alien contactees, experiencers, that it's always the red sand and it's always apocalyptic, a lot of fire, and they think maybe it goes back to our time on Mars, because it's believed even that maybe it's from our life on Mars and that we came here from there. And people who've gone under hypnosis even have basically said, no, like we've had these, and then they end up being extraterrestrial contactees.
Oh, interesting.
Very
that
different.
I actually had not heard about, so that's cool. I'll have to look more into it.
Yeah, apocalyptic dreams, and it always seems to be roughly the same idea. And you're trying to get away from something, you're scattered, you're trying to, it's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So
it's good stuff.
Well, that was something, that I was able to teach you. So,
I have heard of people, different groups of people even, who have very similar dreams. Like there will be, particularly when we're getting into a place where there's a lot of like unrest happening, people will find that in very different places, different communities, people will start having dreams that all have the same kind of symbolism, the same sort of things happening. And, one view on that is, again, depending on how you understand a lot of these things, is that there is like a collective unconsciousness for humans, collective unconscious. And
unconsciousness, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that we are all connected at this sort of core level, but we're usually not aware of it, but that sometimes people can either tap into it, and hence people will talk about things like the Akashic records, or you can connect to it without intending to, and hence why we'll have all of these clusters of dreams where people are all dreaming the same sorts of things, the same symbols, which kind of breaks away from my normal, like, everyone should know what their personal symbols are.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are cultural symbols too.
I've seen symbols in dreams, like on rocks or stone, like mountains, things like that. And I think in one dream I was actually able to remember it, and I was able to get the whole dream and including the symbol. I'd have to go back and find those notes and let you know. But it was very, very fascinating to say the least, because it doesn't happen to me with that much detail usually. Um, Visitations seems to be one of the obviously favorite for those who are aware of them. Visitations from loved ones. Um, a lot of people can't tell the difference about a visitation, or was I just dreaming about my loved one?
Mm.
Or
I tend to find when someone is just dreaming about someone they care about or they miss, that the dream can feel very fuzzy, and also that the person is usually going to be acting in a way, not necessarily as they actually would in real life, but that the person having the dream would want them to be.
Yes.
Whereas when I've talked to people who've had dreams that they believe are actual visitations, particularly like people that have passed on, usually the person just kind of shows up. Sometimes they're like dream crashing. They're coming in like in the middle of a separate story.
It's like the photo bomb, but it's the dream bomb.
Yeah.
Nice.
And they'll often act very true to how they would be in real life, but not necessarily the way the person having the dream would want them to be.
Right.
That makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah. Like, my father passed away when I was in my early 20s, and I have had dreams about him several times over the course of the years. And usually I feel like it's a real, genuine connection, because he is very much like he was when he was alive, but he also isn't just telling me all the stuff I would want to hear. Like he'll show up and we'll have conversations like we would when he was live. We would just talk, as opposed to him like showing up and being like, I am so proud of you and I love you. I'm sure he does. But, if I could talk to him again, that is what I would want him to say.
Yes.
And when we have these dream visitations, it's not like that. I don't feel like I'm just hearing what I want. It's usually kind of rambling, and sometimes he'll give me advice which won't make sense in the moment, but will make sense afterwards.
Yeah.
I
know. I totally, for me, they've always been very vivid, very realistic. They've been very emotional, full color. I could get all kinds of messages. Like it's completely, I've always been aware personally when I've had them. But I've had so many other people. So I think I had one, I'm not sure. So it can be a pretty traumatic experience, to say the least, if you're looking for something, or you miss it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because it could happen like at any given time. It's not necessarily immediately after the person passes. I mean, it could be years after. My grandfather used to come through all the time and give me all kinds of experiences. I've also had a visitation from a past life, and I knew about my past life, and and a message had come through. It goes, I'm going to visit you one night, and I'm just kind of going, sure, because it's just even regression, or it's just you kind of like you half get it, you half don't, and it happened. And I have to say, it was probably one out of two extremely emotional visitations that I'd ever had in my life.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you there's the crossover through oceans of time, as they say.
So I'll tell you a quick story related to this. So my best friend, I consider her like a sister. She's Filipina. And I had a dream one night where a little old Filipina lady came and was yelling at me in Tagalog, which I do not speak, and waving a wooden spoon, and clearly was saying my friend's name. Like, I understood the name part. I could not understand anything else she was saying. So when I woke up the next day, I got a hold of my friend and I'm like, listen, I don't know what this means, but I had a dream that I feel was probably meant for you. where I explained like everything that happened, and she was cracking up. She was very firmly convinced it was her grandmother who was passed, and she had put up in her home a lot of protections against spirits.
Wow.
So yeah,
Like,
her belief was that her grandmother couldn't get through to her directly.
yeah.
But because we're very close friends, we also live like several houses away in the same neighborhood, so it wasn't geographically very distant.
Yeah.
That her grandmother showed up to me to try to get the message through to her. And that was one of the things that happened in my life that really made me just sort of accept that there's reality to these things. Because there's no way on my own that I would just have randomly,
Yeah.
dream that I was being yelled at in a language I don't speak by a little old lady.
Yeah.
With a wooden spoon. The wooden spoon was like a significant detail for my friend, but
yeah.
And
that's very cool. But it goes to show like she had all of these things to keep spirits out. And that's usually a very traditional thing too that gets passed down through certain cultures. Clearly works because grandma couldn't get through.
Yeah, there's actually, not to bring this around to TV, but there's an episode of Charmed in season 1 where someone is killed, and his mother is very traditionally Chinese, and he is trying to get through to her for a reason related to the plot of the show, but he can't because she has they're called food dragons, but little protective charms hung up in her doorways, and he can't pass them. So when he tries to follow her, he's trying to talk to her, and she goes back in the house, he hits like a wall and it throws him back. And I realize it's TV and it's melodramatic and all that, but I thought that is such a great way, though, to show how this stuff works on the spirit end. Like he literally cannot go into the house. It's like a force field around it because of these little charms. And I feel like that is kind of what had happened in my dream situation too, where the grandmother couldn't, she tried, but she couldn't get through to get in to communicate. So, she went to me. I have protections up, but not against that sort of thing. I did not anticipate my friend's grandmother showing up.
Yeah. But they do that in psychic readings. They call it piggybacking. They figure something, just kind of hone in on the reading to say, hey, I have something to say too. I've always found that to be so interesting how they can do that. And there's something else as well when it comes to visitations. And I don't know if you've heard of this. I started hearing about it, and then my mother had an experience while she was awake with it. But there's this theory that when someone comes to you in your dream that is deceased and they look different, even a little bit different. Now, in the world of the paranormal, they'll say, well, if you see a spirit that looks like this and there's something off about them, like the hair might be different or the clothes might be too big for them, then you're being tricked. That's a trickster, right? And there's like, it's not really your loved one. And then my mother had an experience with my father who was living and showed up and didn't look anything like my father. And she was awake, going to bed, and actually physically touched him. My father was in extended care. He wasn't in the house.
Yeah. That is very cool.
Right. I don't know. She didn't think so.
Well, but yeah, I have heard of people when they themselves are in a liminal place, whether like you might be very ill. In some cases, it's people who are, whether they know it or not, getting ready to pass, where they will see loved ones who have already passed. My grandmother, about 6 months before she passed, and it was unexpected with her, it was very sudden. But about 6 months before that happened, she told my mother that she had been dozing, watching TV in her living room, and kind of dozed off. And when she woke up, in like the first few seconds as she was waking up, she saw my grandfather, who had passed like 20 years previous to this, standing there for just a split second. And then when she kind of came fully awake, he wasn't there anymore. So I do think that there's also something to be said for that, like that place when you're first waking up. Do you know
Yes.
what I'm talking about? Like,
Or first falling asleep, right? Like in
yes.
that zone.
Yeah, that middle zone where you're not asleep, but you're not exactly awake either.
Yeah.
I think our perception is so much more open during those periods. I had some experiences after my father had passed where when I would first be waking up, I would immediately get a sensation someone was standing directly next to my bed, and it would always scare the poop out of me.
Yeah.
And then I would open my eyes, and in that split second, I would realize, oh, it's my father. And then he would be gone. And I finally had to ask him to stop. I was like, I appreciate that you're trying to look out for me, keep an eye on me, say hello now that you've passed. But like you are literally scaring me every single morning as I'm waking up. We need a better system.
Right.
And it did stop after that. But I think that some of it was that it was that moment where, you're not quite awake, you're not quite asleep. Things are sort of in the middle zone. And getting back to what you originally said that started this, I did find when I would see my father initially, I knew it was my father, but he didn't look the way he was looking when he passed. He looked younger.
Well, that's another theory, like Wayne is saying, that they deliberately take on the appearance or persona of the time when they were the happiest.
Yes.
So that's maybe people who may not recognize them because I didn't know my father when he was like 20, for example, right? Like,
right.
So I guess there's that as well. But there's, I know in the paranormal when they say, with the trickster, they'll say, no, sometimes the eyes are just really dark. Sometimes the clothes are too big for them. Like it's little things. But there's another belief where they think it's a dimensional, like it may be the same, essence in a different life, in a different dimension, living simultaneously. And there's a crossover. And I thought that's interesting as well.
I've heard that theory mentioned when it comes to the fetch or the doppelganger. There's a specific kind of spirit that will appear, and it usually looks exactly like the person. It's going about the person's day, but the person physically is not there yet. Like you might have, your husband's coming home from work, and he comes in and he says, hi, and you're like, or you usually say hi, and they don't speak, I should say. And you just figure, he had a rough day. He goes to the bathroom, whatever. And then a little bit later, your husband comes in again, but this time for real. And you're like, I thought you're already here. And then he speaks to you and is like, well, I just got home. And you kind of realize, that initial thing that I saw was some kind of spirit, but there's a whole theory that it's actually like a dimensional crossover that you're kind of getting
through.
Yeah, you're getting a quick glimpse into a different reality, and that's why they don't interact with you. Yeah. But it's not necessarily a good omen or a bad omen or anything. It just is a weird thing that happens sometimes.
Yeah, my son, when he was quite young, had a martial arts instructor whose father had passed away. My son did not know him. But apparently his instructor looked a lot like his father. And he came up to me pretty distraught. He goes, I saw, so-and-so. I'm going, well, that's impossible. Because he thought it was his instructor. I said, no, that's not a thing. Because it was him. It looked like him. And basically it was, his instructor said to us, because that actually sounds a lot like my father.
Yeah.
So there's that thing again, where it's just like, there'd be no reason for him, because he's just as an instructor. It's not like you and your best friend.
Right. But sometimes I think too, it's just if you're in a certain place at a certain time, and you're more open, and children usually are.
Yeah. This wasn't a dream though. This was like, the guy was like right there.
Yeah. Waking world. It does happen.
Yeah.
But I've definitely talked to some people that have had some interesting waking world experiences. We had one, not exactly a fetch experience, but kind of. It was me and my oldest, or my middle kid, were watching TV, and my youngest was with his father and was supposed to be getting brought back home. And we both thought the car got there. Like, we saw the headlights, we were waiting, and, you know, heard the car door, and we were both finally like, well, why isn't he coming in? And then look out, and there's nothing there. And then a few minutes later, the car pulled up and he did get out. And we were like, okay, well, that's weird.
That's a thing right there. Yes.
Right. Like, I don't know why it happened. I don't know what the explanation was, but I do think sometimes inexplicable stuff just happens.
Yeah. It's a weird world that we live in, and it's
like you said, it's that dimensional crossover sometimes gets a little.
Well, it makes you, at that point, just how much is dream, how much is that crossover, you know, when you're traveling and such, which sort of leads me to this in a way. Mish says, a departed can't cross something protecting the home. How do they know? Is it a cultural thing? And it kind of makes me wonder if there's a crossover. Does it affect the essence, you know?
This is my personal belief.
We won't hold it against you. Okay.
I do believe that if you in your life believe that certain things protect against spirits, then you as a spirit will also believe that those things protect against spirits. And I don't know if it's the placebo effect. I don't know the nitty-gritty of how this works, but I know that certain things will protect against spirits that are from that culture or that have that sort of expectation. This is a protection against them, but maybe not other things. You know, it's sort of like that thing that'll go around sometimes talking about vampires, where if the person was Christian when they're alive, then crosses affect them. But if they weren't, then crosses don't affect them because they don't believe in it. They didn't have that belief in life. So I think when it comes to ghosts, human spirits, that the same kind of rule applies. You know, if when you were alive, you believed that, you know, bit of iron protects against ghosts, and some cultures do believe that, then you're not going to be able to cross that threshold if there's a horseshoe above it, because you share in that belief and that has power. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. But so how would that apply to, let's say, fairies, the fae folk?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I think that when we look at fairies cross-culturally, it's really fascinating how many things are kind of shared. Like iron protecting against fairies is something you find in a lot of different cultures. Middle East, the jinn are also supposed to be averse to iron. And they're not, obviously not actually fairies, but they're adjacent, similar types of spirits. So I do think that while we have a layer of stuff that's belief oriented, there's also certain things that just have that property to them. You know, that it's not a matter of whether that being believes it or not. It's just the nature of that metal or object or whatever to have protective qualities. So the fun part can be trying to figure out which ones are which.
Yes. It's similar to different you know, different stones. I believe when things are you know, made with elements from the planet, you know, natural things. Again, intention is everything. You know, I'm a believer in mindset and the power behind intention. But I do believe that, you know, this place has everything that we need. We came to this place with everything that we need. We just aren't aware.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting the way that some things can be so specific. But then you have other things like iron, which again protects against fairies. It's supposed to ward off demons, and it protects against ghosts. It's very multi-purpose. But iron is actually not from this planet. Iron is something that has come here from other places, dying stars in particular.
Yes.
so when you know that and realize that people 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago who had no way to know this still perceived somehow like this metal is weird and different and has properties that are, you know, the word iron literally means like blessed or holy. And then you find out later, you know, through science, no, actually this is something that does not come from here, and it comes from stars, and there's just so many layers to it. And then you realize, okay, and this is also kind of a universal protection. Human cultures have all sort of figured this out. That this particular metal, you know, has these qualities, and that obviously kind of transcends individual belief.
Yeah, I mean, I wear moldavite and meteorite. I always wear it, both.
I love moldavite.
Like every day. Yeah. Just instinctively, I've just been drawn to it for as long as I can remember.
I love moldavite. You're lucky if you got some before it got popular.
Oh yes, yeah. I have a ring and a pendant, and very fortunate. And again, with that, I honestly should just do a show on gemstones and different things, because there's so much about it that people, they're buying fake moldavite and they have absolutely no idea.
It's a plague. I try to tell people or warn people, if it's inexpensive, it's not real.
No.
Because real moldavite has gotten so expensive.
It has. It has.
Yeah. So when you're seeing it for like 10, 20 bucks, I'm like, that is not real.
Not. No.
And
that $10, $20 piece would probably be closer to about 75 or 100.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize, I'm sure you know this, but for the audience, that moldavite only comes from one location. And it's literally the remains of a meteorite that crashed. So there's a limited amount of it. And it got super, super popular a few years ago.
I know.
And so the price just went through the roof because there's only so much to be had. It's kind of a finite source. And and unfortunately, because it's a meteorite, it is fairly easy to fake.
I know. Get a certificate of authenticity. Try to find a source you can trust. There's a lot of research that you need to do to it, because there are differences.
Yeah.
And there are different pages, even on social media, that will show you those differences. Like, I had to really do my research before I made my purchases.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's I have a friend who owns a store, which is how I know kind of the back of the house stuff with some of this. And it's the same thing with her. She's like, she always buys from sources that do certificates and verification, and that she can be confident, you know. And like you said, you should do a whole show on stones, actually, now that we're on the subject.
Right, yep, for it.
I can recommend someone that would be a little better than me.
I'll take that recommendation. I'll take it.
Yeah, but people don't realize how many stones are faked. You know, and this is, again, something I learned from my friend who has this store, but like a lot of turquoise is actually dyed howlite.
Yeah.
A lot of citrine is heat treated amethyst. There's so many things out there. A lot of moldavite is glass. A lot of amber is plastic.
That's right. Yeah.
Amber is another one.
It's tough. I look for old pieces.
Yeah.
I'll go to estate sales or auctions. I will look for old pieces more than I will with purchasing new pieces.
Yep.
Right. So I can't believe the time is just like whizzed by again. So
it's a great topic.
No, it was. People love it. I always find it so fascinating, the world of dreams, because it's just it's dreams, right?
Yeah. I love that we got to talk about it, because I do think one thing that I have a very strong opinion about is more people should treat dreams as real, or at least be open-minded to the idea that things that happen in dreams or things we get in dreams are real and important, and not just sort of blow them off.
Yeah. I agree with you. And if you're not sure, again, you know, you have there's a wealth of information out there just to do even limited research that could set you on your way to finding out some really great things. When I started learning about dream interpretation, but it's so hard because I can't just look at one source
Yeah.
and look at it and go, I have to reference and cross-referencing to death. I'm OCD that way, but it's interesting when the same thing keeps coming up, and you're like, you know what? Okay, because some sources give more information than others. But
Mhm.
when you put that together and it pertains to something that you're experiencing in your life, sometimes you might be just getting cool little messages just through, and maybe that's how even the spirits on the side will communicate with you via imagery or just via color, like you say, and then you put it together, and it's just like, wow, that was cool, and I completely get this. Like
Yeah.
this makes sense to me, right?
One thing that I highly recommend everyone do, if possible, is keep a dream journal.
Yes.
Because you'll be surprised too how often you'll have a dream that in the moment you'll be like, this is weird. I don't know what this means.
Mhm.
But then something else will happen. Some little bit of time will pass. And all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, now I understand.
I get it.
Yeah. Now it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. So what do you have coming up? You're writing another book? I know you're writing another book because you're scheduled to come back again. So I know you're writing another
Yeah,
book.
I always have something else. I like to keep busy. I have a book on the fairy courts that's coming out next March, and then I have a book on the wild hunt, which I'm really excited about because that's one of those topics that, again, I think a lot of people would be really fascinated by.
Yeah.
But we just don't hear anyone talking about it too much. Not as much as we should.
I only talk about it, when it's like seasonal. I've mentioned it because it is the most fascinating topic. So I know you're slated to come back, and we might have to just do another one when that book's ready too, because I love everything about the wild hunt.
Yeah, I would love to get into a good combo about that. And
Yeah.
that was one of those subjects that I went into it and I'm like, oh, I know a lot about this. That's why I wanted to write about it. And then I started researching. I was like, I know nothing about this.
But it's so cool.
Like I learned so much.
Yeah.
When I was trying to research it, and I knew it was a fascinating topic, but then I'm like, this is much cooler even than I thought it was. Just the layers with it, and again, that cross-cultural thing coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, I am looking really forward to that. So we will talk. Let's book that. Only you know your timelines. I have to kind of rely on you for that. So
I'm trying to remember when that one's coming out. I think it's June.
Okay, so we could keep going. This is good. So I like that. I love it. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. A lot of new faces and a lot of familiar faces. Great conversation, great questions. And I love how you guys have this whole other world going on in the chat room. I love it. So thank you all for being you. Thank you, Morgan, for joining me yet again with another fascinating topic.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. You have an open door anytime. So for those of you who are listening, you have been listening to The Outer Realm with myself, Michelle DeRoche, and my special guest, Morgan Daimler. We've been talking about dream reality. Check the archives out. Anything pertaining to dreams. It's just amazing stuff. You'll have to check it out. Thursday, tomorrow night, the 51-year anniversary of the DeFeo murders. Laura DiDio returns. She was a news reporter who was brought in by the Lutzes and given full access to the house. She literally broke the story, but there's also a lot of other information about Ronald DeFeo and the murders that she has never shared. And when she broke the story as a news reporter, it was for Channel 5, who was right there in Amityville, and she was there for the famous seance, all of that. She's going to recap, and she's going to share a lot of never before shared experiences and knowledge. So definitely worth checking in. And yeah, so I'm going to say it's always good also when Laura's on. And for some reason, Amityville is just something that just doesn't want to go away. It just really does not want to go away. So thank you all. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee. Big thank you to Justin Snickers, Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much, and we'll see you all tomorrow evening. Thank you all for tuning in, and good night.